Next In.
Welcome to Next In. Thank you, Alex. We are joined. I'm Taylor Duncan, Shane Chown. We run Next Level Technology Recruiting Agency out of Nashville. And Jamie just said, don't cut the original. Yes, please cut it. And so now no one will know what this is happening here. So we are joined by Alex Melton. Thank you for joining us from a way more cool looking and professional looking than the hosts studios or offices. Yeah, you are overdressed. We are the people who showed up in t-shirts and roll a polo, and you have this amazing, we need that background. I want that. Maybe just take a picture and I'll do a virtual version of it. So we're joined by Alex Melton. He is the CEO of Wyrmix. But we're going to talk about that in a little bit, because maybe not so Wyrmix in the future. But we are joined by him, the CEO of Wyrmix. And well, really, we're going to get started. Tell us your story. So, we like to just, everyone right now is immediately lining up and hitting subscribe to this YouTube page. And they want to hear all about Alex. So tell us a little bit about your story, your journey.
Yeah. So I come from an engineering background, right? So before I was doing this, I kind of got my start doing a lot of software development, sort of in the DoD, Air Force space, that kind of thing. And I left my early job right out of college to go and work at a startup up in Minneapolis, where they were making electronic logging devices for truck drivers. And that startup got like $30 million in funding. It was a really good run, was there for a while. Sorry. Oh, that's it.
No, I'm sure it's just our crappy, technical stuff, not that stuff.
So I was there for a bit and was one of the first sort of developers that kind of joined the ranks there. And then after a little bit of being there, I ended up going through a few promotions. I ended up becoming an engineering director there, sort of running a full team. They got $30 million in funding from Trimble. And then the CEO decided that it would be a better investment of the money to buy cocaine and Lamborghinis instead of investing in the growth of the business.
Okay, so
cocaine and Lamborghini, long-term investment, clearly.
Yeah. So you're telling us a success story, and this is for the business book. I appreciate that. All right, I'll write that down. Chapter 1, cocaine and Lamborghinis.
Yeah, great long-term investment. It lasted like 6 months, right? You got the
6 seconds, however.
Yeah, I was going to say about 6 hours.
No, you can tell. You can tell whenever like people get that huge pile of money and they just don't know what to do with it. And like you start seeing things appear in the office that are like, oh, okay, I didn't know that they sold entire like industrial sized cotton candy machines for just like offices. I guess this is a thing we have now. And there are so many things that happened at that company that are just, it's not around anymore, if that wasn't clear already.
You're saying they weren't like Taylor and I yesterday driving to Costco just because we're going to go buy 20 desks, load it up into a U-Haul, and then like shimmy it out ourselves. With
so the C-suite execs were not at Costco loading up desks, and today when we're done with this, putting them together. That's just me.
Well, they were doing something with the money. I wasn't in that inner circle. I was because they all kind of knew each other and knew each other before the thing. I joined as just an engineer and then got promoted. So I was always kind of kept at an arm's length distance. You know how it is sometimes. But
so I know we're off topic. The interesting thing, they didn't learn from, in many ways, both you two are probably too young to even remember the .com boom and then bust of like the late 90s, early 2000s, which was marked with a lot of that. So there was other reasons, right? They weren't super profitable and so on, but a lot of all the money that was coming in was spent on, Christmas parties, bring in Snoop Dogg for $200,000 for your 38 employees as you're growing, right? And that's really what it was. Maybe it wasn't cocaine and Lamborghini. Maybe it was just the Lamborghini as part of it. But it was that idea of the flash and pizzazz and everything else, but not recognizing, like, sure, you just got a funding round. That the funding round wasn't for you to go party. It was for you to grow the company. But
someone didn't tell them that. I don't want to bash on them too hard because, I'm still connected to some of them. But we did end up spending quite a bit of money on taking a reservations out on this really expensive bar in Minneapolis, had this giant ice sculpture made, and it's like we're like 40, 50 people at the time, right? Like we don't need this. It's not like we're freaking Bank of America, right? So anyway, needless to say, company went defunct. Everyone was let go. I was given a severance that was fairly nice, and I used that severance to start this company about 4 years ago. And so, whenever this company was originally founded, I originally just wanted to do like, you know what? I'm really good at building products. Let's just do like an app development consultancy. You know, they're a dime a dozen, but those sort of companies are really built on relationships, and I tend to be okay at that. So let's try it. So that's kind of where going back to the very unfortunate name Wyrmix, right? Again, worst marketing decision we ever made. But the idea is, at least when we started, because we were doing like MVPs for startups, a worm, for those who don't know, is an extremely nerdy dragon that is a dragon that doesn't have arms, legs, wings. It's a minimum viable dragon. Again, like no one's going to know that. But that was the idea.
Now the whole world knows. We have just said it publicly.
Exactly. Like all 20 people. No, I'm kidding.
20 million. Gosh, it's like us and Rogan battle it out each week for the most watched podcast.
If Spotify sliding in.
yeah. If they offered us an exclusive deal,
we're okay if they slide into our DMs. So I would accept that.
Yes.
I'm so glad you all bumped Elon Musk for me. Like I'm
He was busy today. He's working out his Twitter deal.
Oh hell!
But apparently, we're going to SpaceX for our club, according to the party
team.
outside.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there goes our money. All right,
on the runway right now.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Wyrmix and what you guys are doing and kind of the iteration as you are going through this shift in marketing. Where do you see Wyrmix going? What's it doing really today, and where is it headed?
Yeah, so we moved away from just doing MVPs for a couple of reasons. They weren't super engaging, and startups have a tendency of not paying, which is kind of a problem whenever you're trying to run a company, right? So we actually started shifting more towards mid-market companies, which were building more experiential custom stuff, right? So some of our big like key projects that we've gotten that kind of pushed us in this direction, we landed a contract with the Mall of America back a couple of years ago now, where we built experiential kiosks for the Nickelodeon universe, where there was a gamification element to them. Like it did all the things that a ticketing kiosk you would expect to do. So like it sold tickets, had printer, like you could scan it to see how many rides you had left. But there were also like integrations into like the amusement park for like some of the theme stuff that they had. There was some cool like interactivity, not just with the kiosk, but with like their mobile app and like some of the experiences around it. It went beyond just like this boring kiosk. Like, yeah, they could have like gone over and like bought something off the shelf, slapped it down, and it would have been functionally the same. But we found a real niche in taking these solutions that would otherwise be mundane and then making them remarkable through highly branded customization, right? So that was our one big knockout project that we had that kind of pushed us in the direction that we are now. Another big one that we had was whenever we were actually working with SneakerCon through Nike, is we built a sculpture of a Nike Air Force One. We projection mapped onto it, and then in their app, there was a 3D model of the shoe you could draw digital graffiti on. It would appear on the shoe in real time. So you had everyone like scribbling over like the graffiti that they were making. And the whole point of that was like, they wanted people to download their app, and nothing was working. No promo codes, no like coupons, no nothing. So it's like, hey, what if we just made an experience? The only way to interact with it is to download the app. And that worked, right?
Yeah, I think enough people are probably getting sick and tired when it's like, hey, download this app and you get free delivery ones for Chipotle or whatever. And we're all, at least for me, I'm like, I'd rather not have an app, and saving $3 is not a reason to download an app, because it's going to be another stupid app that's going to take up space, and it's going to ping me every 3 minutes that free guac mode or whatever it is. I have the Chipotle app because I go to Chipotle a lot. But if I didn't, like, I'm annoyed, actually. I have so many of these stupid apps to try to save $2, $3, free fries, free whatever it is. That's all food related because I'm fat. But, you know, this idea that if you want someone to go get your app, What if you gave them an experience that was worth downloading the app versus we'll give you $3 to basically collect your data and be able to advertise back at you?
No, exactly. There's a huge uphill battle right now whenever it comes to getting anyone to engage with anything that you build, right? Uh, as much as brands hate it, you're not that important to the end customer, right? You're really not. If you're not providing something of value, and I don't mean that the buzzword value that everyone kind of throws around. I mean, like, whenever you are asking someone to even download an app, that's a transaction. And so they have to be getting like 10 times more out of it, or
So
they
think
won't do it.
selfishly, what's in it for them? In this case, we get to build some dope shoes using this app and it shows up in front of me real time. So there's some sort of instant gratification that they get out of that because of the interactive experience that you were able to create, right?
No, exactly.
So I'm curious, what made you want to start your own company, right? Because, you did some consulting work, you did this startup, you did some of this other stuff, but I mean, being blunt, you're still pretty young into your career, right? So I'm curious what made you go, hey, I just want to start my own consulting shop?
I felt like I had this thing in my head where I felt like I had accomplished a lot of that startup, even though the startup that I was at kind of, went under. I feel like being able to climb the ranks like I did and being able to lead the team that I did and accomplish the things that I did, maybe made me a little bit more confident than I should have been in my own ability to run something. And trust me, like whenever you're like at some other company versus like running your own, completely different ball game. There have been lots of nights where I've like laid in my office staring at my ceiling, wondering what the heck am I doing? So like I was overconfident. I got in way over my head and I was too stubborn to quit. And I guess it worked out. So
he wanted to buy ice sculptures. He wanted to have
the ice sculptures. I don't know. I think it's for me.
Lamborghinis and cocaine with zero fear around it.
I have a real passion for building things, right? Like anything that I do, I want to build it as good as I can and really make it the star of the show. And the problem is whenever I'm working at another company, and I've felt this every stretch of the way throughout my entire career, I always feel incredibly limited, right? So even at the startup that I was at, where I did have a bit more control than what I had in some previous jobs, I was still like, no, we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't do this, because we don't have the budget, we don't have the resources, we don't have what, and like, what are you doing with that? Like, we have the budget for the ice sculpture party, but we don't have the budget to, construct our own ELD in house or like get some of these like backend services up and working correctly, right? And so I think the autonomy, the agency, and I guess my own overconfidence is sort of the answer to that.
Sure. Yeah. And so kind of looking at it, right? You run the company and, clearly it looks like you're hiring in Dallas. You've got roles like you've got Android dev, iOS dev, and some general backend .NET, C# kind of engineers.
Yep.
I'm curious, over the last year, like how have you seen the hiring landscape change as you've been trying to take on projects?
Yeah. So, because we are a consultancy, we're naturally very close to a lot of the companies that like we built relationships with. We don't do staff aug, but we've built relationships with companies who do staff aug, and they are very close to that recruiting place within, because they're hiring like 10 times as many people as like the scope of work companies do. Like we're not out here to be like a 300 person company, right? If we were like a 20, 30 person company, but like made, knocks out of the park every time, then like that would be enough for me. But some of these companies are like, yeah, we have 50 open iOS positions. I'm like, Christ, okay.
Yeah, we like those companies.
Right. And so I go to some of the conferences that they go to. I'm a part of the same like alliances that they are. And one of them is called the Tech Serve Alliance, where I get a lot of notifications about the hiring market and all that from them. And from what I've seen, and this hasn't gotten any better, in fact, it's gotten worse over the years, but the job market as a whole is anemic, right? So there are more positions open than there are workers capable of doing them right now. And that has continued to be the case for the last decade, right? Even like these, going back to what I was saying a second ago, right? Some of these places have 50 open seats that they just can't fill. I think that that's improving slightly now that people are more okay with remote work. But the problem is like whenever you run into companies like us, where we're like, okay, yeah, we're 100% okay with remote work. However, sometimes we have to deal with physical stuff, right? For building the kiosk, or we're doing the Nike shoe sculpture, or we're doing something with some IoT stuff, right? It's not like we can mail you a 8-foot sculpture, right? You're going to have to come into the studio to work with that. So it complicates things a little bit for us, but I think as the industry overall, I think that the acceptance of remote work has opened up options, even if the problem is still there of like, anemic positions.
Well, it's interesting because we talk a lot about, obviously a lot of the companies that we, partner with are remote, but there are some like you that have reasons to be in office. And I think there's certain industries that will still require it, or certain roles that will still require. We're in office primarily because of the environment we're in, right? We're not software developers. We're more of a sales forward, type
Mhm.
environment, more collaborative culture, etc. But for you, you have a different kind of challenge, which is there are hardware components to what we do that require us at least sometime to
Mhm.
be here in Dallas. So you have physical location. You moved, if I'm not mistaken, from Minnesota to Dallas, right?
Right. Right. The company was originally started in Minneapolis, and then we moved our headquarters down to Dallas because there's a better market opportunity here for kind of what we do. We still have a satellite location up in Minneapolis. We still have a lot of our relationships with existing clients up in Minneapolis. In fact, one of our key advisors is still up there working at another agency. And
Do you on like a daily basis text them what your weather is like? Because that'll get them to come down by you real quick. I'm telling you, I moved from Chicago to Nashville, and I send it to
Mhm.
my family all the time. Like, hey, 80 and sunny this weekend. What would you do? So
around this time of year, not so much, because now it's starting to get up into like, okay, well, nice 60s, 70s. Like in Minneapolis throughout the summer, it's almost entirely California weather. It's when the winter hits that it's like, okay, well, I guess it's -50 up there now. So good luck with that.
yeah, yeah, you got 2 months up in Minneapolis where they get to
Mhm.
like take some pride in their weather. It's about 10. So
Yeah.
I know I lived 40 years in that. Not quite
Mm.
Minneapolis, but so the decision for you was really client-based decision making of like Dallas is a better market for our customers.
Yeah. So if we look at the stuff that we're actually doing, right? So at the end of the day, we're still a product development firm, but our angle is that we're creating it in a way that creates ammunition for your marketing teams, right? So even though we're a product development company, like take the kiosk, for example, right? That's a product that we developed for the Mall of America. But the problem that it was solving was a marketing problem, right? And so it's all about like turning these problems into solutions that are marketing teams. And so the industry that strongly overlaps with is like this immersive tech, digital physical hybrid experiences, that sort of thing. And this area, like Dallas, Austin, and Houston, are really, really strong in the immersive tech space, right? You have like 900 pounds here, you have Groovy Jones here, you have like the really, really big immersive experiential marketing companies. The thing is, though, is like we're kind of taking a slightly different approach. So we're not actually directly competing with them. We're doing essentially experiential marketing, but through the angle of product development. So the stuff we build is permanent, right? It's not like a temporary pop-up thing. And so by forming relationships with these, XM companies nearby, um, they're going to get requests for the stuff that like we build that they just don't do because they don't have the capabilities of making those more permanent installations, right?
Hmm.
So
So
it's
have
it's
you
it's a big strategic.
would one of your dreams be to be a part of building something for like South by Southwest?
Oh, absolutely. We go to South by Southwest like every year, right? And we've like talked a little bit about like, hey, once we make it big and we grow a lot more and we have a bunch more, money to spend, let's open up an office there just for the sole purpose of like when South by Southwest comes around, we can turn our office into an experience, and that's a lot of marketing. That's good.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. So tell us what do you like from a personal perspective about Dallas? Differences. You're from, if I'm not mistaken, you're from the kind of that region, right? Where are you from
Yeah.
originally?
Yeah, so I was born in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then I moved to Minneapolis, and now I'm back down here. So
So what do you like about Dallas? What is sell us on why we should make a trip down to Dallas, or we should build an office in Dallas?
Well, I think Dallas is a huge conference hub. Like if you're like from a business perspective, Dallas is a major conference hub and a major like center point in terms of like traveling, right? So if you want to go to any conference in the United States, flying out of DFW airport is probably the best rates you're going to get, like period, right?
Mhm.
And then not to mention because Dallas is that sort of hub between like the East and the West Coast, any international conference or national conference rather is either going to be here or like Vegas, right? So we have a lot of like huge stuff here for that. And we have a lot of support for businesses, and it's not to mention that like Texas is also a very like business friendly state to be in, right? So there's a lot going for it in terms of like setting up an office here and like operating the business out of here, especially if your business relies heavily on key relationships. If you do a lot of like low volume, high value deals where you need to like be, you know, in really good with a handful of people, I think DFW is like a pretty good place for that because there are a lot of people here that are like super connectors. There's a lot of the conferences, like I mentioned a second ago. Traveling isn't that bad. And in terms of cost of living and setting up the business and like the tax benefits that you get for being here, it's like
Sure.
from
Yeah.
a business perspective, everything kind of lines up that way. And
Yeah.
all of that is on top of like the industry that we're in being like really strong in this area. So
Yeah.
We're
We've talked
debating on
about it.
opening an office in Dallas.
Oh, who are you?
We've talked about it. Again, we're in Tennessee, so a state that's very, well known for being very business friendly. And then
Mhm.
Dallas, geographic location is good. It is close to Austin, which is becoming, a pretty strong tech hub. And, we have clients in Texas that make it, at least drive our brain towards thinking, what's the thoughts of, hey, what about Dallas, San Antonio, Austin,
San Antonio is a really good decision too. We've been seeing a bit more tech companies sort of move into that area and businesses kind of picking up there. I didn't really think about San Antonio whenever I made the decision to come here, but now we're thinking like, once we get a bit bigger and it makes sense, maybe Austin is looking like our next big point.
So I'm terrified of scorpions and tarantulas. Do you ever see any of them down there?
I've not seen one. I've been here for a couple of years and I've not seen a single one.
Okay, that makes me feel better because I'm terrified of that. Like
Are you
really.
planning on like going out into the desert and like just plopping your office out there? Or what do you
It's
do?
one of the no. It's like a weird phobia,
fear.
like Arizona. Like I've never seen one there, but yet when I travel to Scottsdale or whatever, I still knock out my shoes and I still like sleep with one eye open.
Texas isn't just like one big desert, right? Like we have multiple different like ecosystems, right? So we have like areas that are really foresty, areas that are like a bunch of plains. We have huge rolling hills as you start going more south, and we do have a desert area, but it's not like Texas is just like one big sandbox, right?
Alex, I didn't say this was a rational fear. It's just a fear.
Okay.
So I was running it by you. You lived there. I figured
It's like
maybe
Nashville was just cowboys and horses running around everywhere.
right? Yeah. So tell us a little bit about you. You went to Oklahoma State University, right? That's kind
Right.
of where you got launched, which isn't necessarily known as this like big tech incubator, right? This isn't MIT, or at least not well known for it. So how did that, what did you find in because you're still like Shane said, relatively young. How do you feel Oklahoma State got you your launch from either an entrepreneurial perspective or a tech perspective?
So in my undergrad, when I was going to Oklahoma State, I got a degree I got 2 degrees. I got one in electrical engineering, one in computer engineering. And my capstone projects were all about building things for other people to take credit for. So something that universities do that a lot of people don't know is they'll actually take on bids from companies that are like, hey, we need this thing built. Let's turn it into a project for a student. And then, you as a naive electrical or computer engineer getting ready to do your capstone project, you're like, oh, hey, this is a really creative solution to this. I'm going to do this and then save me a lot of work. And then that gets given to the company that, made the bid on it. And then you get no credit for it. And like, if we're talking about like what kind of set me up for like the mindset that I have, I think that kind of put me in that direction of like, oh, well, It's good to know that if you're an engineer and you're kind of like not at a place that really respects the work that you do, and that's like 99% of places, your work's just going to get gobbled up and spit out, and then someone else is going to take credit for it and all of that. And so I think that like that bothered me a lot, and then I kind of felt that throughout my entire career. So I one of my first jobs out of college, well, I was working at Textron doing like development on some of the internal systems for Cessna, and then after that I was doing development work for the Department of Defense as a contractor. So I was public side, but through all of that, it's the same story, right? You do something really cool or novel, and it's like, okay, cool. Well, guess who did it? Not you. We're taking credit for it. And so, I don't know. Like at some point, I'm like, all right, if I'm going to be clever and make things that work, then I'm going to do it under my own kind of thing, right? Because otherwise, it starts to get hard to find the passion to build things if it's like you're building things for other people to kind of like, you know, ride off of your backs. And honestly, like I had to go off on a little bit of a tangent, but we kind of see that problem with people like Elon Musk, for example, right? A lot of people look at him as being this great engineer, right? That's sort of the persona that he puts on. But in reality, he's never built anything in his life, right? He purchased Tesla, he purchased PayPal, right?
Did he purchase PayPal? I thought he was part of the original, founding team of PayPal. No.
So he actually started a competitor to PayPal called X.com, and then X.com didn't really work out. So then he joined the PayPal team, right?
Got it. Okay.
So it was like...
So was Peter Thiel like the original founder of PayPal then? And I know the whole PayPal mafia, that whole story. I didn't know that Elon wasn't part of that.
Yeah, well, the thing is what Elon is extremely good at is branding and marketing himself. He's really, really, really good at crafting a narrative and crafting a story that people sort of buy into. And then he leans into that story. He never actually outright says it, but he implies credit for things that he's never actually done, right? And so and I know I'm hyperfixating on him, but like it's not just him specifically. It's just like in the engineering world, that is a huge problem, right? Like the majority of the things that you use, right, very rarely are attributed to the people who actually built them. Like take the iPhone, for example, right? Steve Jobs gets a bunch of credit for that. But there were engineers that worked 100-hour work weeks in order to get that done. Some of them like ended up getting divorced because they were put under such like extremely, bad working conditions, and they like never got to see their families, that sort of thing. And most people don't even know a single engineer's name, right? Like I can't name one off the top of my head, even though I'm sort of passionate about this thing, right?
You're about to have like a Wozniak conversation here, like a Wozniak kind of thing.
yeah. Wozniak is like one of the few engineers who's like able to like sort of make a name for himself, right? But like 99% of the time, you have people who are just as smart, if not smarter than Wozniak, who go out and do these fantastic things that, business people take credit for, right?
Yeah, holy crap. This is like a whole nother podcast where we talk about like leadership. And I do think that's, and it comes from the book, the Good to Great, right? The best leaders, it's that window and mirror maturity, having the maturity to say when things go bad, you look in the mirror and go, what did I do? But when things go right, it's giving all the credit out to the team and go, look at what the team built. And I was a part of it. Maybe I was the vision behind it, but I wasn't the guy coding it or, and I think that's important for leaders to do that. I think that's a giant mistake. Many people get into leadership for selfish purposes. They want to be able to say, this was mine. But in reality, it's like, it wasn't, who cares whose it is? We built something great. Let's worry less about credit when things go right and just pour that onto your team, because most often when you win, whether it's head coach in a sport or the team leading an engineer or CEO of Tesla, when things go right, it was a lot of people that did it. A lot of people.
No, absolutely. And one of the reasons that we're doing these pieces that we're doing, right? So like the data to death piece that we had talked about before, which report.augmentedweekly.com. I'm going to shout that out now. The whole point of that, it's a marketing thing. Yeah, there's an email capture at the bottom. Like it kind of has to make sense from an ROI perspective, like why that exists. But the purpose behind the actual content is to elevate and acknowledge people within the industry, especially within our industry, that are brilliant at what they do, but no one's probably ever heard of them, right? Like Eugene Buono, for example, right? He is the head of creative at Google. Like a lot of their external So Google will actually take on projects as an external consultancy, right? And he's the head creative of like all the creative technologists there. So a lot of like the really cool stuff that's been built out of that has kind of come from his head, but no one really knows who he is, right? So all the pieces that we make, every piece of content that we put out, yes, it does serve the broader purpose of marketing for our company, but the purpose of it is to put these other people on a pedestal who would otherwise be forgotten about, right? And then if they come back later with a project, that's cool for us. But it's a
Got it.
Yeah.
I love it. Say it again. How can people find it?
Yeah, so it's going to be augmentedweekly.com. But if you want to see the data to death report specifically, it's going to be report.augmentedweekly.com. And that's actually like our rebranding. So in a couple of months or so, hopefully next month, fingers crossed, we're no longer going to be called Wyrmix. Our name's going to be Augmented. And we have a whole logo and brand design and everything coming down the pipeline for that.
All right. So how can people get connected with you?
I'm not on Twitter yet. I have been told I need to make one because people in my like what I'm doing need to make one. But I am on LinkedIn, so if you connect with me on LinkedIn, then I'll probably accept it. Or
are you ready to join now because Elon is buying it? You're like, oh, I guess I could join now. Of course.
after my whole like diatribe about like the problems I have with them, like I look okay. No, it's something I've been putting off forever. Like I've been meaning to do it, and I say I'm going to do it, and I've been saying I'm going to do it for like 2 years, and I still haven't done that. So
and please don't join social media as like some New Year's resolution. My New Year's resolution: I'm going to make a Twitter account at some point. It's like
no, it's now that we're growing to the point to where like I can't just rely on like my own personal connections in order to grow the business anymore. We're putting a lot more into like marketing and biz dev and that sort of thing. It's like, okay, well now I have to bite the bullet and like get all these socials and like do this. This stuff that I didn't do before,
Yeah. Nope, I got it. So everyone who is interested in Augmented, formerly Wyrmix, because we have just rebranded like right here.
Right
now, reach out to Alex on LinkedIn because that's the place to find him now. Soon to be on Twitter, which big announcement around that, I'm sure.
Right.
Elon might even say something. So, and we will be tagging Elon like crazy on this one. We'll see if we can get him to post back. Be like, I hate that Alex Melton guy. So last question. This is the one we ask every person to kind of really find out what you're really made of. What's your favorite movie?
Have you ever heard of the movie called is this my favorite movie? I think so.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of
it? So there is a movie called Smoking Kills that was released like early 2000s, right? I don't know if you've heard of it.
Was that with with Crowe, Russell Crowe? No, he did. I feel like I have seen Smoking Kills. I know Shane has not. Like Shane has barely seen the.
No idea what it is.
Sad thing is when you look up Smoking Kills in the Google machine, you just get the World Health Organization.
Wrong movie. So this is one of those things where like because my life has gotten really crazy in the last 4 years, like I stopped watching movies and like I have this image of I got the name wrong basically because I don't watch movies anymore. But it's Thank You for Smoking.
Oh yeah.
That one's pretty funny.
Oh my god. That's probably my favorite movie, and it's just because like the further like I sort of go into the business world, like coming from an engineering background, the more like, oh my god, this is like actually how things really are. This wasn't a parody. This is like people actually.
Up, man. It's like that and like what's the Nicolas Cage movie around buying guns and stuff, like War King or something. It's not War Dogs.
Not War Dogs.
It's not War Dogs. I don't know.
I'm not going to try and guess. I messed up the name to my favorite movie. So
Thank You for Smoking is my dad's like third favorite movie.
Lord of War is what you're talking
Lord
about.
of War. Yeah. It's like Lord of War, Thank You for Smoking are like the same thing. And then there's that other Nicolas Cage movie where he's like anyways.
Wow. 2 Nicolas Cage references. That's 2 more than we needed today. So, well, Alex, thank you so much. Thank you for smoking a movie Shane has actually heard of and seen. Shocked. So, That's new. That's
my
not
childhood.
So, well, Alex, thank you for joining us. We're excited to see the rebranding of Wyrmix into Augmented. Everyone, please connect with Alex if you're interested or just want to follow the company, or hey, you're an Android dev going, hey, that's awesome. That's a really cool company. It's not just building one product that's just going to be one basic app, but instead we're going to consult. We're going to do some augmented reality and experiential marketing stuff. Reach out to Alex. But I really do appreciate you joining us. Yeah.
Yeah, the big way that we sort of like brand that is augmented reality without the phone camera and without a headset.
There you go.
So if that interests you, right?
Well, that's better than I said it. So thank you again, Alex, for joining us. Elon, you can be on next week, but we had Alex today. So thank you so much for joining us. Everyone, have an awesome, awesome day. Goodbye.
Yep.
Next day.